Committee who wishes to vote who hasn't voted? Clerk will report.
Mr. Chairman, there are 22 ayes and 12 noes.
The motion for consideration is adopted. The clerk will report the committee report.
Resolution recommending that the House of Representatives find William P. Barr, Attorney General, U.S. Department of Justice, in contempt of Congress for refusal to comply with a subpoena duly issued by the Committee on the Judiciary.
Without objection, the committee report is considered as read and open for amendment at any point. I will begin by recognizing myself for an opening statement. Today, we consider a report recommending that the House of Representatives hold Attorney General William Barr in contempt of Congress for defying a valid subpoena issued by this committee. This is not a step we take lightly. It is the culmination of nearly 3 months of requests, discussions, and negotiations with the Department of Justice for the complete unredacted report by Special Counsel Mueller in the 2016 election, along with the underlying evidence. I appreciate the fact that the Department responded to the offer we made to them last week and met with us yesterday in a last-minute effort to reach an accommodation. We heard the Department out, we responded to them in good faith, and after all was said and done, we unfortunately were still unable to reach agreement, and we proceeded with our markup today. As I've said before, we remain ready and willing to consider any reasonable offer made by the Department even after today's vote. But if a letter I received late last night from the Department is any indication, I am concerned that the Department is heading in the wrong direction. In response to our latest good faith offer, the Department abruptly announced that if we move forward today, it would ask President Trump to invoke what it refers to as a protective assertion of executive privilege on all of the materials subject to our subpoena. Just minutes ago, it took that dramatic step. Besides misapplying the doctrine of executive privilege, since the White House waived these privileges long ago, and the Department seemed open to sharing these materials with us just yesterday, this decision represents a clear escalation in the Trump administration's blanket defiance of Congress' constitutionally mandated duties. I hope that the Department will think better of this last-minute outburst and return to negotiations. As a co-equal branch of government, we must have access to the materials that we need to fulfill our constitutional responsibilities in a manner consistent with past precedent. This is information we are legally entitled to receive, and we are constitutionally obligated to review. And I would remind the members that the Mueller report is no ordinary run-of-the-mill document. It details significant misconduct involving the president, including his campaign's willingness and eagerness to accept help from a hostile foreign government, numerous misstatements, if not outright lies, concerning those acts, and 11 separate incidents of obstructive behavior by the president that more than 700 former prosecutors have told us warrant criminal indictment. If Congress is not entitled to the full unredacted Mueller report, one must wonder what document we would be entitled to. Our exhaustive negotiations with the Department of Justice have unfortunately left us back where we began, with unprecedented obstruction by an administration that has now announced its intention to block all attempts at congressional oversight of the executive branch. It is our constitutional duty to respond. Let me be clear. The information we are requesting is entirely within our legal rights to receive and is no different from what has been provided to Congress on numerous occasions going back nearly a century. But we do not need to go back that far to find the precedent. As recently as the last Congress, under Republican control, the Department produced more than 880,000 pages of sensitive investigative materials pertaining to its investigation of Hillary Clinton, as well as voluminous other material relating to the Russia investigation and other ongoing investigations. That production included highly classified material, notes from FBI interviews, internal text messages, and law enforcement memoranda. With respect to grand jury information, in past cases involving allegations of presidential misconduct or misconduct by other high-ranking public officials, the Department of Justice, as a matter of course, has sought the permission of a court to release relevant information to Congress, if not to the public. Notably, this includes several cases that were not impeachment inquiries, including the investigation into former Agriculture Secretary Mike Espy and the Iran-Contra investigations, as well as other investigations that were not governed by the independent counsel law. But no matter the fact that the law and history clearly support the release to Congress of this kind of information, the Trump administration has taken obstruction of Congress to new heights. Unfortunately, the Attorney General has been all too willing to support the President in this endeavor. I would also like to respond to two of the concerns often raised by my good friend, the ranking member. He asks, how can the committee hold the Attorney General in contempt for merely complying with the laws on the books? And how can we hold him in contempt when I have refused an offer to allow me to see certain redacted portions of the report? The answers are simple. We issued a valid subpoena for the full report and all of the underlying evidence. The Department has come nowhere close to satisfying its obligations under that subpoena. The Department has never cited a legal basis for withholding the underlying evidence, including last night's threat to invoke executive privilege, which was utterly without credibility, merit, or legal or factual basis, as is, of course, the assertion of, or the statement that they will assert executive privilege by the White House this morning. To the extent that we have asked for access to grand jury information, which is protected by federal law, all we have ever asked is that the Department join us in petitioning the court to determine if it is proper for us to have access to this material. The Department, as I said, has done this on many occasions in the past. We asked for a commitment to join us in that effort again last night, as it has done in many previous cases, and the Department refused. Second, with respect to the offer to lift some of the redactions for me and a handful of my colleagues, the Department has placed unacceptable limitations on access to that information. Their offer would block the members of this committee from reading those sections of the report for themselves. It would require me to leave my notes behind at the Department of Justice. It would prevent me from speaking with my colleagues, with other members of the committee, about what I might see. What good is it? Of what use can this committee make of information that I have but can't discuss with any other member of the committee? I have consistently stated that if we are to do our jobs as members of the House Judiciary Committee, all of the members require meaningful access to the report and the underlying documents. We need to be able to confer with each other about what we have seen. We need to be able to take official action on what we have seen, if warranted. And if necessary, we need to be able to inform a court of law of what we have learned, even if perhaps under seal. If we can find an accommodation that satisfies those basic principles, I would be happy to continue negotiating with the Department of Justice. But now, by invoking executive privilege on all of the materials subject to our subpoena, that process has come to a screeching halt. The administration has announced, loud and clear, that it does not recognize Congress as a co-equal independent constitutional oversight authority, and it will continue to wage its campaign of obstruction. When the administration says it will oppose all subpoenas, presumably regardless of its merits, it is saying that it does not recognize Congress having a constitutional oversight authority over the executive branch. And to those who consider the matter case closed, in the words of some of our leaders, and who urge us to simply move on, I would say that to do so is to announce loud and clear that such a course of action has the effect of aiding and abetting in the administration's campaign of total, blanket, and unprecedented obstruction. The Trump administration and its enablers may brazenly try to cover up the misdeeds uncovered by the Special Counsel. But in this committee, we will represent the American people and ensure the truth is known. I urge my colleagues to think about how the Department's latest position and their insistence on ignoring our subpoena affects our committee over time. Our fight is not just about the Mueller Report, although we must have access to the Mueller Report. Our fight is about defending the rights of Congress as an independent branch to hold the president, any president, accountable. Every day we learn of new efforts by this administration to stonewall Congress, and through Congress to stonewall the American people. The Ways and Means Committee has been denied the president's tax returns when the law states clearly that they are entitled to them upon request. The chairman of the Oversight and Reform Committee has been sued in his personal capacity to prevent him from acquiring certain financial records from the Trump Organization. The president has stated that his administration will oppose all subpoenas, And in fact, virtually all document requests are going unsatisfied. Witnesses are refusing to show up at hearings. This is unprecedented. If allowed to go unchecked, this obstruction means the end of congressional oversight. As a co-equal branch of government, we should not and cannot allow this to continue, or we will not be a co-equal branch of government. I urge my colleagues, whether or not you care to see the full Mueller report, and we should all want to see the complete report, to stand up for the institution we are proud to serve. I expect that we will have a full debate today on the measure before us. I hope that at the end of it, we will do what is right. No person, and certainly not the top law enforcement officer in the country, can be permitted to flout the will of Congress and to defy a valid subpoena. No person, not the Attorney General, not the President, can be permitted to be above the law. That is what is at stake today. I urge all of my colleagues to support this report. I now recognize the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Collins, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this, and to the folks watching here, this slog continues. Last week, I urged you and my fellow members of the Judiciary Committee Democrats to respect the histories and traditions of this committee and conduct its business accordingly. We still have a crisis on our southern border. China is stealing our intellectual property, yet here we are, wasting another valuable week of the legislating calendar against the majority's war against the administration. Today, we are meeting to consider a resolution to hold Attorney General Bill Barr in contempt of Congress. So let's take just a few moments and go through this. What is the justification for holding Attorney General Barr in contempt of Congress? Perhaps that he failed to abide by the Special Counsel regulations? No, he went above and beyond what the regulations required by transmitting the full report to Congress with limited redactions. Could it be that the Attorney General failed to accommodate the chairman's demands for information? No. He offered to let the chairman and 5 other Democrat leaders review the less redacted report at the Department of Justice, including a 99.9% unredacted volume on obstruction. In an odd move for anyone demanding access to information, the chairman and the other elected Democrats given access have declined to view that report. The Attorney General also volunteered to testify before this committee about the report's conclusions and his role in sharing the report. And as we all witnessed, the Democratic gamesmanship forced the Attorney General to forego the scheduled hearing last week. On Monday, the Justice Department offered to meet to discuss accommodations. Yesterday, they made a reasonable offer to avert this spectacle, and once again, they were rebuffed and the chairman declined. Perhaps then the Democrats believe that there has been an unreasonable delay in the Justice Department's response to this. No, that's not true either. In fact, the chairman is moving to this contempt resolution at lightning speed. It has been less than 20 days since the chairman, Nadler, subpoenaed documents from the Justice Department. When the Oversight Committee held Attorney General Eric Holder in contempt, more than 250 days had passed between the subpoena and the committee's vote to hold him in contempt. More than 450 days passed between the committee's initial request to the Justice Department and the committee's contempt vote. Judiciary Democrats are moving more than 10 times faster than Oversight did with Holder. They have moved from request to contempt vote in only 43 days. And yet the Justice Department is still at the negotiating table waiting for the Democrats to arrive in good faith. Why this rush? Without any valid legislative or administrative reason, we can only assume the Democrats that are led by the chairman have resolved to sully the Bill Barr's good name and reputation to accomplish 2 goals. First, Democrats are angry the Special Counsel's report did not produce the material or collusions they expected to pave their path to impeaching the president. I feel compelled to remind everyone the report found, despite offers to do so, no one from the Trump campaign knowingly conspired with the Russian government. And you can't help but notice the phrase Russian collusion has vanished from the Democratic talking points and left a void in the narrative. Since the Special Counsel did not make a prosecutorial determination on obstruction, which was his job, the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General did so according to their mandates as law enforcement officials while giving no credence to the Office of Legal Counsel's opinion regarding that of sitting presidents. As a result, they're angry. They're angry our nation's chief law enforcement officer and his deputy had the audacity to decide the evidence didn't support charges for obstruction and investigation into something the president didn't do. Second, Democrats are afraid of what the Attorney General will find when he completes his ongoing review of FISA abuses of the Justice Department, including how the Russia investigation began. Multiple news reports have suggested those conclusions could be explosive, could end careers, and could even lead to criminal prosecution. Rather than face that, the Democrats have resolved to neutralize Bill Barr by attacking him and the office and his integrity and his career. This is the first step. What a cynical, mean-spirited, counterproductive, irresponsible step is. Meanwhile, our economy is surging, unemployment among several minority groups is at historic low. A recent Washington Post poll shows cratering support for impeachment, but Democrats have no plans, no purpose, and no viable legislative agenda beyond attacking this administration. The House is more than 4 months into a Democratic majority. How many bills passed by this committee have been signed into law? Mr. Chairman, I implore you to see reason. I ask that you recognize the craven and insincere politics that seem to be yielding no dividends for the American people. We've talked on multiple occasions and proved at last week's pharmaceutical markup that I stand ready to work with you to promote solutions. I will not, though, become a bystander as we assail the Attorney General and this committee. Our democracy deserves better. Finally, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to quote a fellow member of Congress. As a member of Congress, I treat assertions of executive privilege very seriously. I believe they should be used only sparingly. In this case, it seems clear the administration was forced into a position by the committee's insistence on pushing forward with contempt. Despite the Attorney General's good faith offer, Mr. Chairman, it did not have to be this way. We could have postponed today's vote and accepted the Attorney General's offer. Instead, by not honoring the Constitution's charge to seek accommodations when possible, the prestige of this committee has been diminished. As a result, that should concern us all. I quote Elijah Cummings. In that case, of course, the committee did seek accommodations. In this case, this committee did not. And in just a difference of opinion between me and the chairman, there has been no escalation of this except on the side of the majority. You have to have both sides at the table for accommodations. That's the way this process works. That is what I've just laid out, 10 times faster than even Eric Holder. And when we get into the other issues that have been discussed here, and again, how we deal with this is going forward with what will be the precedent for the future and will be the precedent for what we have. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Without objection, all other opening statements will be included in the record.